I don't know if I can hold back the profanity any longer, really, just on a personal note. I feel like I'm about to explode with F-bombs. With just the insanity and the lunacy of it all. It's just mind-blowing. The latest example is what's happening in Fukushima. And when I share with you what I'm going to share here, you won't believe it. I'm going to blow your mind here. You're going to be so pissed off and so angry about it, you're going to want to drop F-bombs too. So here it is. I mean, just a little bit of review. And the cover-up it's unbelievable, the media cover-up of this, how big this problem is for the future of all life in the northern hemisphere. And shit just got way worse with Fukushima. So I'm going to be quoting from an article in The Guardian, which is like half fake news, half real news. So it's, at least we're taking from the real news half. The Guardian is reporting, and well, just a little bit of background. 2011 was the year that Fukushima happened, right? To refresh your memory, General Electric and a bunch of morons built the world's most toxic nuclear facility on a major earthquake fault line near the ocean where a tsunami was absolutely going to occur before very long. So they basically chose the spot for the nuclear reactor that would result in almost absolute certainty of a massive meltdown and nuclear contamination of the world. So this was just the dumbest thing ever. But of course, a bunch of corporations like General Electric, which I think owns a lot of media companies. I think they own NBC and so on. I don't know the whole family tree of the morons, but they own a lot of media companies. They needed to make a lot of money, so they sold Japan on this idea. Yeah, build a nuclear facility right in the path of the future tidal wave. It's going to be fine. We have batteries. And the batteries, of course, lasted a few hours and were washed away by the tidal wave, the tsunami. And the backup generators didn't work because they too were washed away. And basically, if you put a bunch of nuclear fuel rods with the world's most toxic nuclear fuel called MOX, containing plutonium-239, which is about the most toxic element known to mankind. If you build a system like that in the path of tidal waves, and you put in a bunch of MOX fuel that has a half-life of 24,000 years and is so incredibly toxic that it kills people with just seconds of exposure, then you're just begging for suicide. And that's how I feel about this right now, that humanity is a cult of suicidal morons who just can't wait to kill themselves. And I don't want to go with them. You know, I actually like to live, but I'm surrounded by a cabal of suicidal cultists who run the nuclear power industry and who run the government, who run the medical industry, the vaccine industry, the GMO industry, all that. They're just a bunch of suicidal morons. And they call themselves scientists. No, they're not. They're quacks. They're con artists. They're short-term, greed-driven hucksters. And so they sold Japan on this idea of putting the most toxic nuclear fuel in the world in the path of a tsunami. And guess what? A tsunami came and took out the system, right? So you've got the Fukushima Daiichi power plant, which is actually, I think, 6 different reactors. 6 of them. And and they store the fuel in pools that are above ground so that they're subject to earthquakes and tsunamis. I mean, the brilliance of this plan, the absolute genius is just stunning. And they literally put the world's most toxic nuclear fuel in the most precarious place imaginable in the path of a massive tsunami on a major earthquake fault line. I mean, Jesus, people. Really? This is the world in which we live? These are the morons running the nuclear industry? Unbelievable. So that was 2011. Now, almost 6 years later, in March of 2017, it'll be 6 years. So almost 6 years later, suddenly radiation is spiking to insane levels. As The Guardian reports, it's an unimaginable level of radiation of 530 sieverts per hour being detected. Now, what's a sievert, you might ask? If you might normally see radiation reported in millisieverts, which is 1/1000th of a sievert, or microsieverts, which is 1/1,000,000th of a sievert. And it takes 1,000 microsieverts to equal 1 millisievert, and it takes 1,000 millisieverts to equal 1 sievert. In other words, it takes 1,000,000 microsieverts to equal 1 sievert. Does that make sense? It's all just unit conversion in the metric system. Thank God we have the metric system. Now, it only takes about 5 sieverts of exposure to kill you. That's the number to remember. 5 sieverts kills you if it's in a short enough period of time. Now, you can take some sieverts over an extended period of time. If you get 5 sieverts over 1 year, it's not going to kill you. You'll have some crazy toxic cancer effects and your hair might fall out, but it's not going to kill you. But if you get 5 sieverts, like in a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, you're going to die within about 30 days. Or at least most people will. It's like a 50% kill rate, okay? Now, the radiation level that's being detected in Fukushima reactor number 2 right now is 530 sieverts. In other words, it's over 100 times the intensity that would kill a human being, or would kill most humans, if they spent even a short duration with that kind of exposure. It's so crazy high that it fries the robots. So the robots are designed to withstand about a total of 2,000 sieverts. So you send a robot into this environment, and they've been trying to use the robots to find the fuel rods, and to clear them out, but the robots die after a couple of hours. It's like 3 or 4 hours, the robots are fried. They're gone because the radiation is so intense, it just fries the circuit boards of the robots. So when I'm reading this Guardian article and I'm realizing, holy crap, this is 530 sieverts per hour. Just to be clear, a sievert is a unit of radiation but does not have a time component. So usually 530 sieverts would be described as per hour, just to be clear. So that's a lot of sieverts per hour in that space. It's crazy. It's a crazy level. Now, the robots that have been sent in there have been trying to find for 6 years where the fuel is. Now, the Guardian is now reporting, wow, there's been a meltdown in there. And it's such a huge meltdown that the fuel rods melted a hole, a 1 meter wide hole in the floor of the containment vessel. And the fuel rods are continuing to burn and melt their way downward. Yeah, where are they going? Well, I don't know, the groundwater supply of Japan, maybe? Maybe an aquifer? Yeah. Maybe you're going to have plutonium in your drinking water, or who knows what. So, or maybe it's going to hit some ocean water outlet somehow, and we're going to end up with crazy radiation in the oceans. Anyway, this is going on right now. And I got to remind you that back in 2011, when I was reporting on this and the other independent media were reporting on this, we were all called crazy conspiracy kooks and alarmists for characterizing the accident as including a meltdown. The word meltdown was banned from the Western media. Because you know how everything is fake news, like CNN and MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post? Well, it's always been fake news. That's the thing that a lot of people are just now coming to realize. It's always been fake news. The reporting on Fukushima in 2011 by CNN was fake news. In fact, CNN's reports on 9/11 were fake news. CNN's reports on Oklahoma City, I think in 1992 or 4, that was fake news. Everything CNN has ever reported has been basically based on fake news, just so you know. And when it came to Fukushima, the fake news was, oh, there's no meltdown, no problem, no issue. Don't be alarmed. It's all under control. Don't worry. Go back to sleep. Keep taking your vaccines. Keep eating your GMOs. You're going to be fine. Well, now they just casually report, yeah, it was a meltdown. Everything melted down. So number one, where's the apology to all of us in the independent media that accurately reported this as a meltdown back in 2011 and 2012 and 2013? That's nowhere to be found. There's not going to be any correction in the mainstream media to say they were lying to you this whole time. But that's not even the story here. That's just a side note. The real story is, and I'm reading this in The Guardian, is that they can't find the fuel rods that they're looking for. All right, now here's an actual quote from the Guardian article. An actual quote. TEPCO and its network of partner companies at Fukushima Daiichi have yet to identify the location and condition of melted fuel in the 3 most seriously damaged reactors. Removing it safely represents a challenge unprecedented in the history of nuclear power, end quote. You got that? So just hold on a second here. Beat your head against the wall if you need to get through this. 6 years after the meltdown, TEPCO doesn't know where the fuel rods are? Seriously? They don't know where the fuel rods are? They haven't removed them? They're melting through the floor? The robots are fried in a couple of hours? Ooh. The radiation levels are like spiking to insane levels of 530 sieverts per hour? Really? And you don't hear a peep about this from the Western media. For the most part, a few exceptions like The Guardian covering this, but for the most part, it's like, hey, everything's fine. Just go back to sleep. You're okay. Eat your Pop-Tarts. Buy a cereal with your coupons at the grocery store. Meanwhile, we are facing the most apocalyptic nuclear disaster that our world has ever seen. And those of us who are telling you the truth are always called alarmists or kooks because we understand science. We understand physics. So let's get into a little bit of the physics here. Plutonium-239. The nastiest crap, the nastiest radioactive isotope that we've ever discovered. It has a half-life of about 24,000 years. So just to explain that, when you have radioactive isotopes of different elements, such as plutonium, which I think is at 209, the mass, I think it's plutonium-209. If I'm correct about that, yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 239. 209 would be bismuth, right? Okay, 239, plutonium-239. The mass is converted to energy at a predetermined schedule, just based on the laws of physics. Basically, the atom is deteriorating, is losing its mass, converting it to energy over a period of time. Now, for plutonium-239, that happens to be 24,000 years, is how long it will take to lose half of its mass. So if you have 1 kilogram of plutonium-239, after 24,000 years, you will have half a kilogram. Where did the other half go? It was converted into energy, according to E equals mc squared. In other words, it's a lot of energy from a little bit of mass, right? So plutonium-239 is so extremely dangerous because it will persist in the environment for about 500,000 years in some toxic level. And it's very, very toxic to the body, very toxic to biology and plants, and it gets into the soils and so on, just like cesium-137, which has a half-life of only 29 years, by the way. But that's also another radioactive isotope that comes out of these nuclear accidents. So you got cesium-137, you got plutonium-239, you have strontium-90, you got iodine-131 with a half-life of 7 days. So you've got like the iodine radiation hits you now. It's intense and it's short, but it fades quickly. It's gone in a few weeks. Then you got the cesium radiation, contaminates the soils for about 200 to 300 years. It's like medium level radiation. It's going to kill you, but it's going to take a few years to kill you while you're eating plants grown in cesium soil. And then the plutonium, that shit hangs around for 500,000 years and just basically poisons humanity, destroys the environment, makes large sections of the world essentially uninhabitable. Now, in Fukushima, you have all of this. You have the toxic cocktail recipe, the dirty bomb of the nuclear industry, all combined in a fuel called MOX. And MOX might as well just mean megatox or something. It's like the planet killer fuel. This is so bad that if aliens came to the planet and wanted to wipe out all life and all nature and poison the planet for a long time, they would use MOX. Not saying that aliens are going to do that. That would be stupid. I'm not even going to get into that subject right now. That would be stupid to destroy the planet. Moving on. MOX fuel is the dumbest idea ever in the history of humanity, and now it's completely out of control in Fukushima. It's burned a hole through the containment vessel, and they can't find it. And they can't even use robots because the robots die in hours, and they don't know where this fuel went. Now, here's the other thing. These fuel rods are just sort of randomly laying around just wherever they ended up after the tidal wave, okay? So you've got fuel rods that may be touching each other. They've got an outer shell, and as that outer shell melts away, just like it melted through the floor of the containment vessel, the outer shell of fuel rods can melt away and it can expose the fuel. And when a lot of these fuel rods come into close contact with each other, they basically achieve what's called criticality, which is almost like a dirty bomb explosion, almost. Not quite like a nuclear bomb detonation, but close to it. They can basically engage in very rapid conversion of mass to energy, because the heat causes the fuel rods to melt, and it breaks the outer containment. So a massive amount of heat causes all of this fuel to like melt into a pool, and then very, very bad things happen. You get too much of this in too much of a dense enclosed space, and basically it goes supercritical. You know what I mean? The physics of it are bad news for the scenario that we have right now. There is nothing to prevent all of this MOX fuel at Fukushima from achieving criticality right now. TEPCO is clueless. They don't even know where the fuel is. I just read you that line out of The Guardian. They have no idea where the fuel is. What's their quote? TEPCO has yet to identify the location and condition of melted fuel in the 3 most seriously damaged reactors. You got that? 6 years into this thing, they don't know where the fuel rods are in 3 out of the 6 reactors. I got news for you. It only takes 1 reactor to achieve criticality in the fuel rods to basically make much of the northern hemisphere uninhabitable for a very long time. And they've got 3 of them right there, and they've done basically nothing. And what do we get out of TEPCO and Japan and General Electric? Lies. Nothing but lies. As if they think they can just lie their way out of this like they lie their way out of everything. You know, this is the problem with the status quo. They think that they can just pass a law and change reality. Why don't they just legislate that plutonium-239 should no longer be radioactive? Maybe that's their solution. Just pass a law or take a vote on it and claim that the majority should rule against the laws of physics. Just take a vote. Vote down plutonium. Vote no on plutonium. You know, this is the kind of nonsense that they are engaged in. Just total cover-ups, total lies, total spin. They won't tell anybody the truth. And they're just covering up everything, including all those who have been seriously harmed by the radiation around Fukushima. And the level of incredible fiction that they're engaged in to try to cover this up actually reminded me of a possible fictional solution to this whole thing. Yeah, there's a solution to this. I know how to solve the Fukushima fuel rods situation. Superman. All we need is Superman. Superman can swoop in there, and as long as there's not any kryptonite in the MOX fuel, he can just pick up those fuel rods and separate them, keep them apart. That's what you want to do. You don't want them to go nuke. You keep them apart, and he can fly them out of there and move them to smaller, isolated containment vessels, perhaps set up by the Japanese government. So Superman could solve this thing almost instantly. You know what the problem with that is? There is no freaking Superman. There is no human that can waltz into 530 sieverts per hour and walk out of there alive. That's the problem. And there's not even any robot that can do it. And you can't train gorillas to do it, or that, not that that would, I mean, it would be totally unethical in the first place, but you can't train animals to do it. They would die too. So how are you going to do this? No, seriously, I'm asking you this question. Think about it. How are you going to go in there and retrieve the fuel rods and prevent this nuclear apocalypse? This Fukupocalypse, you might call it. How are you going to do that? I mean, the fuel's melting through the floor. They don't know where the fuel rods are. They can't even get close enough to get in there and look around. Apparently, that's what the Guardian is reporting. They can't touch the fuel rods. They can't move them. I don't know if you've seen pictures of this facility, but it looks like it's just one more tidal wave away from collapsing. So the upshot of this, so this is what I'm trying to share with you about the total lunacy and idiocy, suicidal nature of humankind, is all of us in the Northern Hemisphere are right now one Japanese tidal wave away from basically being irradiated to death. From just having Fukushima radiation, toxic MOX fuel spread all over the Northern Hemisphere, spread by the winds, the jet stream, and perhaps even ocean currents. We're talking about plutonium-239 all over the forests of North America, including Canada and everywhere else. And I guess the answer from the lying left-wing media is just, oh, you should be more positive. Yeah. Okay, why don't you tell that to the plutonium, you dumbass? Being positive is not going to solve this problem. This is a physics problem. And I don't think that your positive attitude is going to change the equation of E equals mc squared. I very much doubt it. I think that the delusions of humanity have finally collided with physical reality. And it's the nuclear fuel industry that has brought us to this moment of incredible awareness of our own stupidity as a species. I mean, the stupidity is, it's not just like mild stupidity of dumb animals, like turkeys. Turkeys are really stupid animals. I don't know if you've ever interacted with turkeys. They're stupid. They're stupid birds. I mean, chickens are smarter than turkeys. I can tell you this because I raise chickens and I see wild turkeys. There's no comparison. Chickens are geniuses compared to turkeys. And yet even turkeys, even though they're so incredibly stupid that they can get stuck behind a log and not figure out how to walk around it, they are not so stupid that they would poison their entire ecosystem, that they would poison their own children and future generations, 1,000 generations down the road. Turkeys would not do that. They're not that stupid. To achieve that level of stupidity, you have to go to humans. You have to go to the arrogant, fake science, nuclear excuse makers and nuclear industry promoters who are basically just setting up power plants to have an excuse to make more nuclear warheads. That's what it really comes down to. They need enriched uranium for their nuclear missile program. So they run this energy program as a front. It's basically a front. If they didn't need the nuclear weapons, they wouldn't need the nuclear energy plants. It's all just a giant con. Because there's a completely different nuclear power plant design that is self-regulating and that cannot have a meltdown. But the fuel that's used in that plant is not the kind of fuel that's useful to the nuclear war industry. So those kinds of plants are never built, even though they would be much safer for humanity. You got it? This is all about making nuclear warheads. So humanity has now committed really eventual suicide with this. And by the way, it just scratches the surface. I haven't even shared with you the other larger truth in this, which is that you've got hundreds of nuclear power plants all across America. I don't know what the actual number is, somewhere between 200 and 300 plants active at any given time. Right? Now, review the physics of how nuclear power plants work. The excess heat given off by the fuel rods is put into water that's used to drive turbines that generate electricity, right? But in order for that water to not overheat and boil off, you have to pump it around. How do you pump it around? You use electric pumps, right? Pumps that run on electricity. Did you know that nuclear power facilities actually consume a large amount of electricity from the grid, even as they're generating electricity? They use electricity from the grid to run the pumps that keep the fuel rods cool enough to prevent them from going critical. And if you don't cool the fuel rods, you have a what? Fill in the blank. Meltdown. Correct. Correct answer. A+. Now, since the pumps run on electricity from the power grid, and the pumps are electrical devices run by complex circuitry, this means that every nuclear power plant in America is vulnerable to what? Fill in the blank. Solar flare. Yes, another A+ for all of us. Solar flare, or an EMP weapon from a rogue nation like North Korea, which has been promising to nuke North America as soon as they have the technical ability to do so. You know, when their ICBMs stop plopping into the ocean and blowing up, when they can actually make it to North America, they're going to set off a nuke. Kim Jong-un has already promised to do that. So what happens when you have a solar flare, which NASA says there's about a 1% chance every year of a massive solar flare that will bring down the power grid? All right? That's a NASA study. It's actually 12% every decade. So roughly 1% a year. Now, and the last Carrington event was in the 1800s. There's another one that can happen any given day. Any given day it can happen. A solar flare of sufficient size would take out every electronic circuit board in every nuclear power plant in North America. In other words, guess what? All the pumps stop working. All the pumps go down. This could happen from an EMP attack that sends out a massive electromagnetic pulse, it takes out the circuit boards, or this could happen from a solar flare. So now what happens? I ask you this question. What happens when you have, let's say, 200 nuclear power plants in North America? They're all being powered by these fuel rods that obey the laws of physics, of course, and that you can't let them get too hot or they'll go critical and have a massive meltdown. And then suddenly all the pumps stop working. What's the plan for that? Well, they have backup batteries, but the pumps are broken, you see. The circuit boards that control the pumps are fried. They're gone. Do they have backup circuit boards? Yeah, well, they were stored in a locker that wasn't EMP proof. They're fried too. So how are you going to power the pumps? Oh, well, you've got generators, but that doesn't work because the pumps are broken. And how are you going to get fuel to the generators anyway? Because the 18-wheeler rigs that bring the fuel, they don't run either because their electronics have been fried. So now you got 200 nuclear power plants across North America going critical, experiencing meltdowns all at the same time, roughly the same time. Now it takes time. It can take weeks for them to go into a criticality event. It can take weeks. You can have emergency efforts to try to pour buckets of water into the fuel rod tank, the pool. Yeah, here, everybody line up. Everyone bring a bucket of water. We're going to prevent the nuclear apocalypse. Everyone has a bucket. Like, I guess that's the plan. It's stupidity. It's stupidity at such a level that I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by my own species at this point. People are so incredibly stupid and so distracted by all the things that don't matter, like celebrities and fashion and sports. Who cares? You've got 200 to 300 nuclear power plants running in this country right now that cannot survive a grid down scenario without many of them going into meltdowns. So you see, the Fukushima little apocalypse, the disaster in Fukushima, it's just a small-scale practice run for the big event, the grid down event, that could put hundreds of nuclear power facilities into a similar catastrophe. And yet, we can't even get one facility under control in Japan. Not even one. 6 years into it, they don't even know where the freaking fuel rods are. 6 years into it, they can't build a robot that can live more than a couple of hours in there. They can't find the fuel. They can't move the fuel. They can't contain the fuel. There's a freaking giant hole in the floor. The fuel's gone. What are you going to do? Call Superman to go nose diving down that hole and find the fuel rods before they hit the aquifer? I mean, seriously. There is no plan. Stupidity now rules society on the big issues. How do people think that we're going to solve Fukushima? How do people think that we're going to solve 200 nuclear power plants or more going into meltdown all at the same time? How do people think you're going to survive, just basic survive a grid down scenario? How are you going to, where are you going to get water? Where are people going to get food? No one's thinking. They're just sitting around stuffing their faces with Taco Bell and just beer. I don't know. People are just so incredibly stupid when it comes to these big issues that it's literally like living with a worldwide suicide cult, and everybody can't wait to drink the Kool-Aid. And it's just like, you people freak me out. And much of this is done in the name of science. You know, scientists are the most dangerous morons of all. They put all of us at risk. You know, it's not just like a doctor. A doctor might put one patient at risk at a time, but a scientist screwing around with plutonium, they can put the whole planet in the shooting gallery of chance. Let's see what happens. Let's just come up with the world's most toxic fuel and build it on a fault line in the path of a tidal wave. And let's call it green energy. I mean, this is what it has come to. So you see why I'm about to drop F-bombs constantly. I can barely hold them back. I feel like there is like an F-bomb fuel rod inside me, and it's trying to emit vast amounts of energy according to the E=mc² formula. And I'm just barely containing it. I'm barely holding it back. Because sometimes just to properly describe humanity, you have to just use the most obscene words imaginable. And so if you're thinking that I might offer a solution in this, you can give up hope on that right now, that there is no solution for this. As far as I can tell, there is no solution except to just start dismantling all the nuclear power facilities we have right now. I guess there is a partial solution. You could at least start doing that. Stop making more of this toxic fuel. You know, shut down the plants we have now. Get rid of pull the fuel rods out. Isolate them somewhere else, out in some desert somewhere where they'll be safe for 500,000 years. And just wait for the half-lives to kick in. But to have them active in a pool where they can have a meltdown and they can achieve criticality if the coolant is gone, that's very dangerous to our world, very dangerous to society. That's incredibly stupid. So I guess what I'm saying is we should shut down every nuclear power plant in the world, probably. In order, and then, really, if we wanted safer nuclear power plants, there is a design for that. I think a woman came up with it, by the way. I think a female scientist came up with it. She's been completely ignored. Industry is not interested in her design because, again, it doesn't produce, it doesn't use the kind of fuel that's also simultaneously a byproduct of the nuclear weapons processing industry. So they don't want to use her solution. But if we wanted safer nuclear energy, we could use her solution. Or Or we could use something else. Combination of natural gas and solar energy. And wind kind of sucks, actually. It's not very efficient for the most part, but solar is pretty good. Solar's a very viable alternative. Germany's done a good job with solar, and they're pretty far north of the equator. So a lot of the United States could really be powered by just nothing but solar. We don't need nuclear power plants. I'm telling you, we don't need them. And they're putting all of humanity at risk. So, okay. If you want to follow the news on this, we have a couple of websites. FukushimaWatch.com is one of them. FukushimaWatch.com. We've also started a project called Censored Science, and we're going to be coming out with some films on that. That is, if any of us are still here to do it. Until the plutonium fills the skies, we're going to be working on the Censored Science films. And we're going to have some whistleblowers from the nuclear industry, by the way. At least that's my goal. So censoredscience.com will be that website. It's probably not up yet at the time you're listening to this, but it's coming. And we're also covering other issues such as biosludge, or biosolids, which is the mass contamination of farmlands by the EPA-approved process of collecting all the industrial waste and the human sewage and just calling it fertilizer and then dumping it on farm fields all across America. Another form of complete, total idiocy. Fake science by the EPA, how they've destroyed whistleblowers who tried to blow the whistle on that practice. See, again, I can just name example after example of how the status quo of humanity is just a bunch of suicidal freaking morons. I mean, literally, they take human shit and industrial waste and they just call it fertilizer and they just spread it all over the farms with all the pharmaceuticals that are in it and all the heavy metals, the industrial waste, the hormone disruptors, the HRT drugs, the antibiotics, everything. They just spread it out there and then let cattle, like dairy cows, forage on that so that all your cow's milk is contaminated with all the stuff that got flushed down the drain in your city, including, all the cocaine and everything else. I mean, it's just insane. There's so many examples of the complete suicidal insanity of humanity. I don't know how any informed person can actually be optimistic in the short term. You look at humanity, and it's just one giant suicidal cult of total freaking morons and denialists. That most of them are just denialists. They just sit around and they just deny reality. There's no problem in Fukushima. There's no problem with the biosludge. There's no problem with the mercury in the vaccines. What are you talking about? There's no problem. You're just an alarmist. That's what these people are. Just denialists. There's no problem with the global debt supply. They just, I don't know what it is. They don't believe in cause and effect. What? They don't believe in the table of elements, the laws of physics. They don't believe in mass to energy conversion. What is it about these people? They're reality denialists, and they're everywhere. They run the EPA. They run the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They run the government. They run the industries. They run the media. I mean, they're everywhere, and they're morons, and they're so dangerous and so suicidal to humanity that we'll be lucky to survive them all. So to conclude this, I have an amazing idea. All right, so I guess I do actually have a solution here at the end of this. Here's what we do. We take all of these suicidal morons who are running the vaccine industry, the toxic pharma industry, the toxic biotech industry, the toxic nuclear energy industry, and so on and so forth. We take them all. We give them like free tickets to something, and they show up, we grab them, and we hand every one of them a wrench. And then we take them over to Fukushima reactor number 2, and we line them up, and we say to each one of them, Your job is to go in and find a fuel rod. You've got 90 seconds. Go. And then the next one. Your job is to go in and find another fuel rod. You've got 90 seconds. Go. And you just line them up. This is what you do. You just chuck them in reactor number 2 and then reactor number 3 until they get the fuel rods out. And you got to give them special instructions like, hey, if you get a fuel rod out, don't get too close to the other guy who also found a fuel rod. You don't want those 2 fuel rods coming into close contact. So keep your fuel rods separate, and then we'll have a refreshment area for you over here after you complete your mission. So you just send them in there. It solves so many problems all at once. You just take the insane suicidal cult leaders of modern society and you send them into Fukushima to find the fuel rods. Because I think you can live about 90 seconds in there. You could probably pull that off. Tell them it's a test. Tell them if they find a fuel rod, they get a government grant. They'll love that. They get a government grant and a coupon for $2 off Nature Valley fake granola bars. How about that? They'll love that shit. They're just stupid enough to fall for it. This is what we got to do. We got to take the people that caused this problem and force them to solve it. That's the answer. Line up all these ass hats and just send them in. And then build a monument to them or something. Monument celebrating the lives of the same ass hats who caused this problem and finally figured out a way to help solve it. That should be like the monument to the suicide cult of humanity, and we finally got rid of some of the assholes who caused this problem in the first place. That's what we should do. Call it the Fukushima Monument to Human Stupidity. And everybody wins the Darwin Award. When you find a fuel rod, you get a Darwin Award. How about that? In addition to the other benefits like the government grant. You win a Darwin Award too. Yep, that's what we should do. Told you we have solutions. We don't need Superman. We've got the morons who caused this problem. Line them up, send them in. Problem solved. All right. So obviously, I'm being a little snarky and satirical about that, but I hope you enjoy the comedy routine mixed in with this very serious message. I don't know what this means. I don't know how you're supposed to go about your day knowing that all of this is out there. I guess functionally all of us have to find ways to ignore it in the short term just to be able to function, right? Just to get through your day. You can't focus on this constantly. But I do want you to know what's really going on out there. And basically humanity at this point is pretty much effed. See, I held back the profanity right there because I have a little bit of self-control. Humanity is effed right now unless something drastic changes very, very soon. I don't know if that's going to happen. So I guess if it doesn't, I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, for healthrangerreport.com. Click subscribe to stay plugged in to the Health Ranger Report. If you'd like to help support this video and other videos like this, visit healthrangerstore.com, where everything we sell is laboratory tested for heavy metals and more. You'll find superfoods, storable survival foods, nutritional supplements, and a full line of synthetic chemical-free body soaps, shampoos, and oral care products. Everything we sell is non-GMO, and it's all completely free of chemical sweeteners, artificial colors, hydrogenated oils, and other toxic ingredients that you want to avoid. Find all this and much more at healthrangerstore.com.